Hey now peeps, spoiler alert, if you have not seen my top 10 game publishers list, I named Victory Point Games as one of those Elite 10. While that company has its faults, it's got very poor quality of components, which you'll see in a minute, there is some really innovative and interesting stuff coming out of there. They have such a varied selection of games from all different themes, all different play levels, solitaire games, war games, traditional card games. I mean, I'm kind of stunned at the amount of just different things that they have going on there, and you got to give props to that. And I would say that there's nothing that's more different than the rest of their catalog than Who Stole the Cookie, which is their newest, probably one of their smallest, if not the smallest games they've ever produced. And it sits in stark contrast to most of the war games that Victory Point has under their belt. It's got very cartoonish looking graphics, and it's right there in the title. You're trying to figure out who stole the cookies. You're trying to find two cookies that are laid out among different cards, sitting in front of all the players at the table and in the center of the table. There's no talking about what the cards are. You're just trying to investigate the cards and distinguish the crumbs from the cookies. It's not that complicated, so I won't say much more here. Let's just go straight to the overview. Then we're going to come back and I'll give you my final thoughts. Who Stole the Cookie is a party deduction game for 3 to 8 players. The goal of the game is to find 2 cookies out amongst all the other cards that are out amongst all the different players and in the center of the table. And if you can successfully find those 2 cookies, you're going to be the winner. But how do you actually get to that point? Well, first thing I want to mention is that the packaging is a little bit innovative for this game. It looks like this. You slide the sleeve off, and then the case for the cards actually opens up into the instructions. And that's because the game is pretty simple. There's not a lot of instructions to be had. In fact, they had room for frequently asked questions on the back. Now, there's really only 4 types of cards in this game. The vast majority are crumb cards. They look like this. And there are 3 cookies. Now, you're not going to use every cookie in every game because for most games, you're just going to use 2 cookies. It's only when you get to a higher number of players that you're going to have to use all 3 cookies. But even then, the goal is just to find 2 cookies. You have chocolate chip cookie. That's pretty good. You have oatmeal raisin cookie. Those are pretty good too. And you have frosted sugar cookie. That's my favorite. And I think they have a pretty good cookie selection for this game. I would have been really upset if they had chosen macadamia nut cookies because I hate those. In any event, once you determine how many players you're going to have, and how many cookies you're going to have, you're going to shuffle up all of those cards and you're going to deal them out. You're going to deal 2 of them face down. That's a very important distinction. Face down to every player, and then 2 face down in the center. Once you get done dealing all the cards and everyone's got their 2 cards face down in front of them, each player is allowed to peek at one of the cards in front of them. Now, the important thing in this game is that you can have no communication about what you've seen under any of the cards. Once you've seen it, you keep it hidden, you don't tell anyone else what it is, and nor would you want to tell anyone else what it is. So once you've gotten your cards and you've peeked at one of them, then the game begins. You'll determine randomly who is going to go first. On your turn, you have 1 action, but you have 4 different things you can do with that 1 action. The first is simply to peek at a card. You can peek at any card at the table. You can peek at the other card you didn't look at the beginning. You can peek at the card you already looked at if you forgot, or if that has happened to change places. You could peek at any card in the center. You could peek at any other player's card, but you only get to peek at 1 card and then tell no one else what you saw. Your other option is to switch 2 cards. You can take a card from your side and switch it with one in the center. You can switch 2 of your opponent's cards. As long as you're switching 1 to 1, 1 space to 1 space, then you're good. That's what happens when you switch cards. Your third option is to shuffle the 2 cards in front of you. So if you're trying to throw someone off, you'll simply shuffle them underneath the table, put them back out if you think someone knows too much information and you're trying to trip them up, or for whatever other reason, maybe just to throw someone off. And the final thing that you can do on your turn is declare. You can declare that you know where the 2 cookies are. How this is going to work. First and foremost, you cannot declare that you have 2 cookies in front of you. I'm sorry. In order for you to declare if there's 1 cookie in front of you, both cookies must be here. So there can't just be 1 cookie in front of you. There has to be 2 there. Same thing with the center. There can't be 1 cookie in the center, 1 cookie in front of you, or 1 cookie in the center, 1 cookie in front of another player. They either both have to be in the center, both in front of you, or 1 each on any number of other players. They can be in front of the same opponent or in two different opponents, but they either have to be both in front of you, both in the center, or on other opponents. When you think that you know where both cookies are, you can choose to declare on your turn, and you pick the two cards that you think they are, tell that out loud to everyone, then you're secretly going to look at those two cards. So if I thought they were both in the center, I would secretly look at both cards. And if you're right, you flip over both cards and huzzah, you have won the game. You guessed correctly, you knew where the two cookies were. If you were wrong, however, you will say nothing about the identities of those two cards. You will secretly put them back without revealing them. Then you will flip over both of your cards and you are out of the game. You cannot tell anyone anything about the information that you've gleaned. That's it. That's the end of your participation in the game. The game continues until the other players are able to discover where the two cookies really are. And that's really the game. You're trying not to be eliminated, trying to find out where the cookies are before the other players do, because cookies are delicious. Let's go to my final thoughts. Who Stole the Cookie is a classic example of how you should always know what you're getting into. When you look at the description for this game, it says that it is a deduction party game where you're trying to find out hidden information. That's at least the implication, if it's not said in that many words, that you get from reading the description of the game. Well, it is that, but nowadays when people say things like that, you have in your head an image of the Resistance or Werewolf or I guess Two Rooms and a Boom, although I don't like that game. But these hidden role games where everyone's on different teams, there's a lot of intrigue and espionage and lying and backstabbing and bluffing and deception and all of these things. This is not that. This is not that kind of game, although there's a tiny smidge of that in here. This is just pure, like, unfiltered, deductive reasoning and guessing. Yeah, that's basically what it is. I mean, there's a lot of randomness to this game. I mean, there's a lot of luck. You got to hope that you just by chance find the right cards, or the game can easily get bogged down into every player just randomly grabbing cards, or what's even more annoying is that it can get bogged down in people looking at the same card every turn. Like the first round, everyone just looks at their other card. That's been our experience anyways. I mean, there's not really a lot of incentive not to, I guess, because every choice is as good as another at the very beginning. Where the game gets interesting is when you're trying to sort of deceive the other players. Like, you look at a card one turn, and then maybe no one else does look at that card. Maybe it's mid-game, everyone's just doing their own thing by that point, and then people see you switch a card or shuffle a card, and they're like, oh, well, why did he do that? And you can do these kind of bluffing tactics to think, oh, that card that he moved there, one of those cards must be really important, when in fact you could just do it and it means nothing. There could be two crumb cards. So there's some interesting interaction there, and the sort of how it amps up to the point where there's like a pressure that builds up, because as you play, it's clear that every turn people get more and more and more information, and by the time that you get perfect information, unless you get very lucky at the beginning of the game, by the time that you get perfect information, chances are most everyone else has perfect information too, or very close to it. So you have to decide when to pull the trigger, and I think that is where the fun comes in this game. Because in the games that we played, two of the games that we played, the first one, I was still very new to it, trying to figure out what I should be doing at that point. And when I felt like I had information, I felt like this pressure, like it was a race to find the cookies, which just sounds funny. I was just like, you know what? I'm declaring. I think I have an idea. I know that this is the cookie, and I know that, I'm not saying this, I'm thinking this. I know that this is the cookie. I know that this person over here switched these two cards. I'm going to take a guess and say that it's that card there. And as it turned out, whether he intended it or not, that was a deception, and I was wrong, and I was out. The next game, I took a wild shot in the dark because I knew where one cookie was, and I knew that when another individual looked at the other, one of them was in the center, I knew that. Another individual at the table looked at the other card and then got a weird look on his face. And I just, again, the game had gone on even longer at that point than the first game, and I said, I'm going to have to take a shot here. I don't care if I'm out. I just, I want to put an end to this one way or the other. And I said, those are the cookies, and boom, those were the cookies. And so I think that's where the fun comes in. The little bit of deception and that little bit of just hoping against hope. The pressure's on. You got to take a guess. I'm not sure if that's what they intended with this game, but that's the fun that I took out of it. Having said all of that, is this a good game? No. It's a game that's going to stick around for a while because I want to try it with more and more different varied groups of people and different player counts, because we only played it 3 times, and one of them was only with 5 players and one of them was only with 4, or 2 of them were with 5 players, one of them was with 4 players, and I don't know if the game is really going to excel that much more with 8 players or 7 players, where you have 3 cookies in the mix. You're still trying to find 2, but you have 3 in the mix. I think that might just drag the game out longer, but I don't know. I don't feel like there's enough substance here to keep you involved for a very long period of time. I think the idea of it is neat. I just think that there should have been something else. This feels like a prototype, like the kernel of a good idea of a great game, but as it is, it's just okay. There's some interesting things to be had, but just sort of the lack of excitement until that someone just decides to declare, preemptively, it just doesn't feel like a complete game to me, which is kind of sad because I like the idea of it. I like the cartoony graphics. I hate the way that the cards are cut, but that is nothing new from Victory Point Games. Come on. That's like the only thing you have to get right. I understand that you're doing it on the cheap, but I've worked in printing for 17 years, and it drives me crazy to see that awful cutting. And in a game like this, it's actually important. It is important that all of the cards look the same on the back, and these don't. So if I was going to continue to play this ad nauseum have a lot of plays under my belt, I would have to sleeve them. Which means I would have to use opaque sleeves that cover up the back, which negates the purpose of having that nice looking art on the back, which is really frustrating. So that's my little rant about their components. This is the one game where it really bothered me. Do I recommend this game? Well, it's cheap and it's cute. And I think that there is going to be a segment of people who this is right up their alley. People who love deduction and just puzzly, mind-thinky games. This is the game for them. For people, however, who lean more towards their party games being like The Resistance, probably not. I'm holding on to it for now because I want to try it with more and more varied groups of players, but I think that unless you can pick it up cheap, this is probably going to be a pass because you do have better options. But again, I'm very happy that Victory Point Games is taking a chance and trying all these new and different things. And maybe they'll release the Milk expansion for this cookie game, and it will make it more interesting. Who knows? My name is Nick. This has been Board Game Brawl, and I'm reminding you to get out there and game every day and in every way. Take care.